In the world, there are many peculiar and seemingly inexplicable phenomena that sometimes appear interesting to us, and at other times downright frightening. However, such phenomena often completely captivate our attention, as they evoke a natural curiosity within us. If you were to encounter peculiar beings without faces, it is probably advisable to resist this temptation and, instead, make a quick escape. The definition of these mysterious, faceless entities is, however, complex and lacks a clear form. The community of paranormal researchers itself does not have a unified stance on the nature of these phenomena or entities. According to witnesses, these beings resemble ordinary people, but their faces are replaced by a blurred, indistinct image accompanied by a strong, dark energy. There is a countless number of testimonies from people who have had encounters with these entities. Their stories are often documented in police records, but can also be found on various platforms such as social media or in foreign press. Eyewitnesses, however, agree on one point. The encounter with a faceless being induced an indescribable fear in them. Although these incidents did not result in physical harm, no one had the courage to approach these beings. The experiences of people who encountered these entities and shared their stories are incredibly eerie. The first and perhaps the most haunting story of all time comes from a woman with the username Janella Jones, who shared it on the social media platform Reddit. According to her account, the inexplicable incident occurred one evening as she and her friend Dan were returning from an evening entertainment to her countryside home in the English county of Essex. The road to their home was narrow and unlit, surrounded by woods and fields, creating a pleasant rural atmosphere. However, everything changed on that night. The moon and stars were hidden behind the overcast sky, and around the car there was a black darkness pierced only by the car's headlights. Janella, who was behind the wheel, had to slow down due to the narrow and uneven road in the darkness. However, the moment she eased off the gas, something happened that they will remember for the rest of their lives. Shortly after reducing speed, a resounding thud echoed on the car roof. Both passengers initially assumed that a branch from a tree had fallen onto the vehicle. However, Janella's original intention to stop and assess the situation changed when two strong impacts on the roof were heard, as if someone were forcefully pounding it with a fist. Their hearts almost stopped from fear. The panicked driver pressed the gas pedal, and the car accelerated rapidly. In the rear-view mirrors, nothing was discernible, yet they still heard banging on the roof. After a moment of intense driving, the road sharply turned into a curve. At such high speed, the vehicle almost skidded off the road, and it was distinctly audible that something large had fallen from the car onto the road. Immediately after the curve, there was a turnoff onto a forest road. When the headlights from Janella's car illuminated this turnoff, a horrifying sight was revealed. On the dusty road, there was a massive puddle of blood, and that was not all. Dan suddenly noticed in the rearview mirror a figure running behind them, trying to catch up. When the mysterious figure reached the car, they clearly saw that its clothing was completely covered in blood, and it had no face. Instead, there was a blurred black streak in place of a face. Janella stepped on the gas again, and the car sped away. After about 10 minutes of fast driving, they finally arrived home. Both rushed inside in fear and locked themselves in. They immediately called the police. The next day, the police closed off the entire area, but there was no trace of the mysterious attacker. However, investigators found a large amount of blood on the forest road. A torn deer lying nearby suggested it had been attacked by something exceptionally strong. The police rejected the faceless attacker version and accused the couple of using hallucinogenic substances. Janella and Dan vehemently denied these allegations and continue to assert that an unknown faceless entity pursued them that night. The second story also comes from the social media platform Reddit and is from a user with the username ProfessionalDate824. It was supposed to take place years ago in the American state of California, one early morning around 5 o'clock. The author of the post was driving that day in a car with her mother, both women hurrying to the early shift at the local factory. It was still dark outside, and the streets of the city were almost empty. The journey was progressing quickly, and it seemed like nothing should disturb it. Suddenly, however, the driver noticed a girl staggering in the middle of the road, her steps unsteady. Her clothing was peculiar as well. She wore a long white shirt several sizes too big for her, reaching down to the middle of her thighs. The user mentioned that the girl's black hair was incredibly unkempt, and she walked barefoot. The driver had to stop the car to avoid hitting the girl. then rolled down the window to ask if she needed help. What followed, however, is something both women won't easily forget. Up close, it was evident that something was not right with the girl. Her skin was strangely bluish-gray and damp, almost as if she had just stepped out of a shower. When the driver addressed the girl, she suddenly stopped but didn't utter a word. Since she had her back to the car and remained in place, the woman in the car intended to honk at her. Before they could do so, the girl finally began to turn around. Disheveled hair initially covered her face, but when she swept it aside, the women in the car were horrified. She had no face. Eyes, nose, mouth, everything was missing. In the place where people normally have a face, there was only a black void. The girl stared at the women in the car for a few seconds and then suddenly sprinted to the other end of the road, disappearing into the darkness in an adjacent park. The author of the Reddit post claimed to have never felt such fear. However, when she shared the experience with friends and acquaintances, no one believed her. Everyone thought it was just a well-executed prank. Was it really just a joke, or did the two women witness something that is difficult to explain? Another testimony about mysterious faceless beings comes from the website Phantoms and Monsters, managed by American paranormal researcher Lon Strickler. The author of the text reportedly hails from a small town in Texas, just a few dozen kilometers south of Dallas. A strange incident occurred one evening when he was heading to a neighboring village to visit his girlfriend. The village had very sparse street lighting, approximately one lamp every 150 meters. For safety reasons, he parked his car under one of the lights and then proceeded to his girlfriend's house. When he returned to his car after about 2 hours, he suddenly felt an unexplainable sense of fear. He didn't feel comfortable at all on the dark street. He quickened his pace to reach the car quickly and leave as soon as possible. However, he suddenly noticed that just a few meters from his car, a man was standing in the shadows. A thief? Or perhaps a homeless person? Therefore, he proceeded cautiously, keeping a close eye on the man. When he finally reached the car, he noticed that the man was wearing a significantly worn-out, old-fashioned coat. However, the strange man didn't move at all. He just stood in place, almost like a statue. Probably a homeless person. "I'll quickly get into the car and leave before he wants something from me," reportedly flashed through the author's mind. However, the strange feeling of fear became even stronger until his hands trembled. He quickly got into the car, started it, and prepared to leave. When he turned on the lights, illuminating the peculiar man on the sidewalk, his heart almost stopped in horror. Now, it was clearly visible that the man had no face. Instead, he had a smooth white surface, almost like an unfinished wax figurine. Moreover, the entity didn't even have legs but hovered about 30 centimeters above the ground. At that moment, the behavior of this mysterious entity changed, and it started slowly approaching the car. The driver then stepped on the gas and quickly escaped from the scene. However, he never found out what he had actually witnessed that evening. Another story from the Phantoms and Monsters website originates from the Canadian Okanagan region. One of the witnesses who recorded the story claims to work as a forestry worker. According to him, he and his colleagues often stayed in the forest until late at night, especially after big storms when it was necessary to clear the forest roads and smaller county roads. During one such shift, a terrifying event occurred, after which, reportedly, the author of the text would never enter the forest at night again. He was returning with his colleague late at night from the forest to the valley, where both of them lived. They had a long and exhausting day, clearing fallen trees, and both were looking forward to getting some rest. The night was indeed very dark. Dense clouds obscured the stars and the moon. When they were about 10 kilometers from the inhabited area, they saw something unusual on the forest road. Along the edge of the forest road walked an old, hunched woman, draped in a long cloak or perhaps a coat with a hood. They were quite surprised to see an elderly lady alone in the forest at such a late hour. They decided to stop and ask her if she wanted a ride somewhere. As they approached the woman, they rolled down the window and inquired what she was doing there and if she might have lost her way. The old woman stopped and slowly turned toward the car. Both men screamed in fear. Instead of a face, the woman had a large gray hole. She didn't behave aggressively, just stood there, gazing at the car without making a sound. The frightened men slowly started to move away, keeping an eye on the mirrors to see what this strange being would do. After a moment of hesitation, the old woman reportedly turned around and disappeared from the forest road into the woods. Since then, both men avoid night work and walks in the forest because, in their words, they never want to experience anything similar again. All these stories revolve around sightings of mysterious entities, with witnesses stating that they unmistakably lacked a face. However, the nature of these beings remains a question. Are they extraterrestrials, ghosts, demons, or just products of ordinary imagination? This question is pondered by many paranormal investigators who strive to collect and analyze stories related to encounters with faceless entities. Due to the large number of recorded testimonies, it is not possible to simply dismiss all cases and accuse those people of deception, drug use, or hallucinations, as skeptics claim. Since there is no recorded instance of these entities physically attacking or causing harm to anyone, law enforcement agencies have largely neglected the investigation of the majority of these testimonies and set them aside. Where, then, should we seek the truth? Similarly to other cases, it could be useful to look back into the past. The mystery of faceless beings is nothing new. Our ancient ancestors already spoke about these peculiar entities. In Japanese mythology, there are beings referred to as no-para-bo. Literal translation is faceless ghost. These beings supposedly resemble humans but lack a face. They spread an aura of fear around them because they enjoy frightening people, although they are not aggressive. Sometimes, they take on the appearance of another person known to their victim, only to later revert to their faceless form and intensify the fear. Memories of no-para-bo date back over 1,000 years. Stories about them are still told in Japan, and occasional reports of sightings of these beings emerge. In Russian Dagestan, stories about similar entities are also told. Locals refer to them as cemetery demons because they are said to appear primarily around cemeteries. However, encounters with them can also happen in abandoned houses or simply in dark places. They physically resemble humans, but lack eyes, a nose, or a mouth. Although they manifest mainly at night with frightening sounds such as tapping on windows, knocking on doors, or simply lingering near human dwellings, they have never harmed anyone. Similar entities are reported in China and South Africa. The existence of these faceless entities is thus known worldwide, and stories about them have been told throughout history. Despite this, we still don't have an answer to the question of what exactly these entities are, and their mystery remains unresolved. That's all from us for today. If you're interested in videos filled with mysterious mysteries, dark stories, legends, or monsters, and you crave more, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any new videos.